Hi guys, Jackdaw here, and today I'm talking about Dragon Age 4. In fact, I'm recreating a series I started quite a while ago. It's actually coming up to a year ago. And within this series, I looked at how Dragon Age 4 can be better than Dragon Age Origins. The set of videos were basically a wish list, and it kind of still is. But I'm not going to call it that specifically because there's more depth to it than just a bog standard wish list. So without further ado, a topic very close to Dragon Age fans seems to be origin stories. This is also something I feel very passionate about too. The fact that Dragon Age 4 needs origin stories back. So for those of you who are unaware of Dragon Age Origins, maybe unaware of Dragon Age as a whole and the concept of an origin story, within Dragon Age Origins, when you create your character, dependent on your race and class, you get a very specific prologue mission that are very different from each other given race. There are also multiple origin stories per race, like the City Elf and the Dalish Elf. These missions are very different to each other, and they introduce the player into the world in a very diverse way. We'd learn more about these races and how they fit into society, but more importantly, we'll be able to create a vast backstory for our protagonist upon the foundation that is given to us through the power of these origin stories. These prologues themselves were very good. Each story gives a character roles and responsibilities to fulfill. For instance, within the human noble storyline, we are given another motive for one of the many antagonists within the main storyline of Dragon Age Origins. It has a much deeper connection than just wanting this character dead. And then within the dwarf origin story, the player is actually allowed to have a kid, and then there's even a good old wedding story which places the player as a groom within that quest. These origin stories that are in the Dragon Age franchise, or at least the first game, are something that I've never seen in any other iconic RPG. They seem to be very special to Dragon Age, and it's a damn shame we haven't had any since Dragon Age Origins, because they're bloody brilliant. The way they can make the player identify within this world whilst also understanding its cultures and lore is just a fantastic way to open the game up to the player, especially given the fact that this is an RPG. You truly feel that within this prologue. So basically, Jackdaw wants these origin stories to return in Dragon Age 4. I feel that they'd be a great way for any new players wanting to get invested into the story of Dragon Age and they want to play the next game, so that would be a great way for them to be incorporated for those new fans. But primarily, I want them back because they're so damn good and they're so iconic to Dragon Age. So BioWare, bring back those origin stories. So looking at Dragon Age 4 in particular, and its story, we really don't know much about it at all, which gives me much room to explore and create potential origin stories for Dragon Age 4. So what do we know about Dragon Age 4 so far? I might do a video on that later on, but basically, we know the end of the Trespasser DLC. We know the basic ending of Trespasser. The fact that Solas will be the villain, or at least one of the villains in the game, and we know we're going to Tevinter Imperium, and then there's basically what's going on with the Inquisition. Other than that, we know nothing. So guys, I figured I'd create a few of my very own origin stories for Dragon Age 4. A pitch, if you'd like. I've also tried recreating these scenes within Inquisition, you know, so you all have something pretty to look at while I delve into this. But while you're looking there and listening to my voice, I'd love to make more of these in the future, so tell me what you think of these ones. That's what I need from you guys. But anyways, without further ado, I'm going to tell you one of my origin stories. So the first origin story I have in mind is for the human, elf, and dwarf. And this origin story is called the Inquisition Soldier, or the Army Soldier. Basically, you're a soldier. So, in this origin story for Dragon Age 4, our protagonist is already an existing member of the rebuilt Inquisition, or a smaller army that relates towards what happened at the end of Trespasser. Something like that. Either way, we fulfill a leader role within the army. Nothing too big, just something that would earn the respect from recruits. So this story starts when you are awakened one day from your home. Yes, you have your own home in Jackdaw's origin story. You are awakened by a recruit. Something wrong has happened in Dragon Age prologue style. An explosion across the way up to Tevinter. You are told to meet the higher-ups and investigate what has happened. The higher-ups still could be Cassandra Pendergast, but that really depends solely on if it's still an Inquisition army or not. Within this narrative, you are sent out into the world with a small party, the area being North Ferelden. Each member of the party being another recruit. Explore the area, and the player themselves is the leader within this squad. So you taking the role, venturing towards the area in which this key plot event took place. As you get closer, the party is suddenly ambushed, and each of the playable recruits die, Dragon Age Origin style. You are left for dead. And then suddenly a rider appears. Wrong rider. A grey warden rider comes out of nowhere and kills the remaining ambushers. The warden turns to you and picks you up onto their mount. This character is the pull towards the end of the origin story and the start of Dragon Age 4's narrative, as the warden rides towards the key plot area in which shit went down. So this is just the first origin story of what your typical warrior could go through. If we did have class specific origin stories, this would be that origin story for a warrior build. I've said it quite quickly there, but there would be more depth to this. It would be about a 30-minute mission kind of. I just love the idea of our playable protagonist in the next game to actually be a member of the Inquisition already. I feel that's the way the story is going. And this Grey Warden character is something I will get to after my next origin story. I will come back to that character, don't you worry your cotton little buds. I haven't refined this story totally, I've just got the basics outlined there and how we'd get invested into the plot. The main big thing with this origin story is the fact that we're a member of the Inquisition, we've got a leading role, there's been an explosion in the way of Tevinter, and we are rescued by a very specific Grey Warden. Okay, so moving on to my final and next origin story. I mentioned this origin story within my Griffins video. This origin story is for the human and elf races, and it is called the Grey Warden origin story. So within my Griffins video I did a while ago, I asked the question, what if our new protagonist of Dragon Age 4 were to be a Grey Warden again? So in this origin story, the player grows up in Fort Weishaupt in the Anderfels, training from a young age with other Grey Wardens, maybe one we may have seen before. The plot upon this story is the fact that the Wardens here are hiding the last ever Griffins here and keeping them secret, as you would. The player within this time, growing up as a child or a teenager, would be grooming a small Griffin. Griffins require to be groomed all their lives. They choose the rider, not us. So building a relationship with our small Griffin, as a Warden, we now reach the age where we're supposed to fulfill our obligations as a Grey Warden. You've spent your wardening so far by doing small errands around the fort and the Neanderthals, basically becoming somewhat of a courier. This changes though the day many Grey Wardens did not return from a classified mission across Tevinter's borders. A mole within the ranks. Attackers are inbound upon Fort Weishaupt. You're about to finally hone the skills you've been training for your whole life, fighting alongside many Grey Wardens. Tevinter soldiers siege the fort. Your main priority is to see that your Griffin can retreat to a safe place. Being only young, the creature has not mastered the art of flying with a rider. You can fight stealthily or by force. You make your way to your Griffin. As you do, a Tevinter Magister approaches you, casting a spell at your Griffin, causing it to fly in a shriek. You fight the Magister, but he pummels you to the ground. He picks his staff and aims it at your chest. As he casts a spell, it knocks you unconscious, but as you fall down to the ground, his sword impales the Magister, and an indistinguishable figure picks you off the ground. You can't figure out who this is, and you awake 12 hours later. You found yourself mounted on horseback with this Grey Warden character heading towards the key plot area. This origin story has a lot of background and plot and lore behind it. The idea of Griffins returning and Grey Wardens and being a Grey Warden yourself. It has a lot of these key themes that would be hard to implement in a game, or we would not like to see, because I know everyone wouldn't want to be a Grey Warden and such. And it's kind of a been there, done that thing. But the main takeaways are the fact that Griffins would exist in this world. We would have the respect of some sort of Griffin. I like the idea of playing as a kid, only for like a 5-minute mission, and then growing up a tiny bit, just doing training. Maybe it could be a tutorial level. And then the main takeaway is the fact that we are a Grey Warden, and we have been rescued again by a Grey Warden. The Grey Warden character here within both of these origin stories is the Duncan character. This is the character that will always be there for every origin story. This is so all the strands of each origin story can come together and the narrative can flow. Now I've kept this Grey Warden's identity anonymous for now, because I feel that your key choices would determine this Grey Warden's identity. Now I feel very loosely that this Grey Warden could be the hero of Ferelden. Very loosely, I feel it could be Alistair Ferrin, Logain, Stroud, or Bethany or Carver and Mel. For BioWare's sake and being realistic, I see this Grey Warden character being either Bethany or Carver. These two are much more easier to do. The other characters I mentioned have been in Dragon Age Inquisition and the hero of Ferelden. Each of these characters here, apart from Bethany and Carver, have been in Dragon Age Inquisition, and they have their own thing going on. You know, the whole Stroud, Logain, Alistair, like Daedalus and the Fade. They have a lot going on basically. And then the hero of Ferelden could be dead or unknown, and I feel that would be hard to implement if your hero of Ferelden is dead. But Bethany or Carver, only one of them die, so maybe a Dragon Age keep thing goes on there, and I feel that we could get Bethany or Carver as a super cool badass warden, because they are said to move to Fort Weishaupt in Dragon Age Inquisition when you talk to Hawk. Now yes, Carver was a dull character, people might not have liked Bethany, but hey, time changes and they could be much more cooler. They could be legends now. How many years have passed since Dragon Age 2? At least 10? They could be so much better now. They could have actually got some character development. I would personally just like to see this attachment, because I did like the EML twins. Well, I liked Bethany, didn't like Carver, but I did like Bethany, and I think it would just be cool just to see more returning characters in Dragon Age 4, but that is another video in its entirety. But anyway guys, these are just a few concepts that I thought of, or what I'd like to see from a Dragon Age 4 game. Obviously you have your own opinion. There's so much more I could go into within these, but I feel this video is already going to be quite long. But at the end of the day, I just don't want Dragon Age 4 to do this cop-out thing that just incorporates a basic prologue for each race like Dragon Age Inquisition, that didn't feel special for me. I was a human noble, and everyone was treating me like poo. It didn't make sense because I was a snobby noble guy, and everyone was looking down at me and calling me prisoner and stuff like this. They would at least have a tiny bit more respect for me for being a human noble. I know that doesn't make sense because we are this prisoner and stuff, but kind of after that section when I am a human noble again, I just didn't feel noble at all. So I would just love to see these origin stories return, just for the sole purpose of giving each character you make a different perspective and a different story. But anyway guys, tell me down below your own Dragon Age 4 origin stories. I'd like to hear your own, and I'd love to do more of these origin stories, going into Inquisition and then and then trying to visualize it as I explain it. I really enjoy doing this. It's really fun, and I'd love to do more. So give me your opinion on the ones that I gave, what you think of them, what you'd like to see, what you thought of them. I really want to know what you feel about playing as Grey Warden again, or being a member of the Inquisition again. I really see the first one more likely than the latter. These two stories here are quite opposite in context. You've got one which seems really basic and very loose, and you can go in any shape, you can go in any way you want, and then you've got one that sounds very linear, growing up, being a Grey Warden, having a griffin, getting knocked down, and then this happening. The origin stories themselves are kind of meant to be quite linear. They have choice in there, but generally it's about telling you this basic backstory and then putting you into the RPG game. Generally it's about telling you a basic linear story and then later on pushing you into the main narrative where you get to make all those choices. Then again, there are some really fun choices in these origin stories. Like in Origins, you can create relationships with other characters and you can do all this other fun stuff. So there's a lot that can go into these origin stories if they are made well, and I would just love to see them in Dragon Age 4. But anyway guys, I need your opinion. What do you feel about origin stories returning? Would you like to see them in Dragon Age 4? If so, tell me down below. But until then, I have been Jackdo. Don't forget to subscribe, like, you can hit me up on Patreon if you wish, or Twitter or Tumblr. I'm always there hanging about. But until then, you know who I've been, and I should go.